When we use convolutional neural networks for image classification, different layers tend to perform different tasks. The earlier layers usually learn simple features like edges and corners. The middle layers learn more complex patterns and object paths, and the deeper layers capture highly abstract representations. Because of this, the common expectation is that adding more layers should allow the network to learn more complex features, generalize better, and achieve higher accuracy. Intuitively, a 56 layer network should outperform a 20 layer network. However, when researchers actually tested this idea on real datasets, the empirical results turned out to be completely opposite to this expectation. Instead of improving performance, deeper networks ended up having a higher error rate than their shallower counterparts. If we plot the training error versus epochs graph, we can clearly see that the deeper network actually performs worse. The gap between the performance of the shallow and deep networks is known as degradation gap. Now, the important question is, why does this problem happen? The issue here is not overfitting, but optimization difficulty. Think about this. If a 20 layer network is already optimal, then what should the remaining 36 layers do? Ideally, they should simply pass the input forward, unchanged. This is known as identity mapping. If that were possible, the output of the 56 layer network would effectively be same as the output of the 20 layer network, meaning the deeper network should perform at least as well as the shallower one. However, in practice, a plain neural network cannot easily learn identity mappings because the weights are randomly initialized. The network naturally learns complex transformations, and during optimization, the weights are pushed towards non trivial solutions rather than simple identity functions. On top of this, there is a second major issue, the vanishing gradient problem. During backpropagation, gradients flow backward through the network and get multiplied across layers. By the time they reach the earlier layers, the gradients become extremely small and effectively vanish. As a result, the early layer weights barely update and remain close to their random initial values. So, what is the solution? To understand this, let's look at the fundamental building block of a residual network, the residual block. In a plain neural network, this block will simply consist of a few layers followed by activation functions. Let's call this transformation f of x, which represents the output of these layers just before the final ReLU activation. In such a network, data flows sequentially from the previous layer to the next layer without any shortcuts. Now, let's slightly modify this structure. We add a residual connection just before the final ReLU, such that the skip connection performs an element-wise summation between the usual output of the network and the input x, assuming their dimensions match. In other words, instead of learning the full mapping directly, the network learns a residual on top of the input. Let's denote the output of this summation as h of x, where h of x is defined as the element-wise addition of f of x and the input x. Now, the idea is to form a network by stacking these residual blocks one after another, which together forms a residual network. In our example, we are simply showing 3 such blocks followed by an output layer. One important thing to keep in mind is that this is not the name of any particular fixed architecture. Instead, it is a design paradigm that is used in neural networks. It is also not specific to convolutional neural networks alone. There is no strict rule regarding how many layers must be included inside each block or how the blocks must be structured. The core idea behind all residual networks is the concept of identity mapping. Most modern deep learning architectures, especially very deep ones, use some form of residual or skip connections. Now let's look at a concrete example. This is the equation for the output of the fourth layer, A4. As you can clearly see, the output is passed through a ReLU after first adding the weighted sum plus bias from the main network path and the skip connection coming from the previous residual block output, A2. Let's denote this weighted sum plus bias term as Z4. Now, if this Z4 term turns out to be 0, the block will simply pass the residual input directly into the ReLU function. In this case, the output becomes equal to the input, effectively solving the identity mapping problem. Now let's talk about this addition. This is an element-wise addition. But what if the dimensions of A2 and Z4 do not match? This becomes a problem. Imagine that Z4 is a 256-dimensional vector, while A2 is only 128-dimensional. In that case, how would the addition even proceed? The problem is solved using what is called a projection matrix. Imagine a matrix with dimensions 256 by 128. If we multiply this matrix with the skip connection output, it transforms the input into a 256-dimensional vector. As a result, the dimensions now match those of Z4, and the element-wise addition becomes possible. Now, this projection matrix W can either be learned as a parameter of the network, or it can be a fixed operation such as zero padding, whose only purpose is to fix the dimensionality mismatch. Now, if you read the original paper, you will see that the authors explicitly show what happens when a 20-layer network and a 56-layer network are trained. This directly demonstrates the residual block concept we have been discussing. They also show the use of W projection matrix, which is implemented using one-by-one convolution. Now, if you look at the architectures presented in the paper, they first show the VGG network, followed by a plain 34-layer architecture, and then a 34-layer network with residual connections. The residual version performs remarkably well on the ImageNet dataset and went on to win the first place in the competition. If you examine the architecture more closely, you will see that the first layer uses 64 filters of size 7 by 7, and every subsequent layer uses 3 by 3 filters. As the network goes deeper, the number of filters increases. The model consistently uses ReLU activations and batch normalization throughout. I would strongly recommend that you walk through the original paper at least once for a more robust understanding. It should be much easier to follow now since we have already discussed the core ideas behind residual learning. I will put the link of the paper in the description box below. And here is the summary of whatever we have learned.